we've been working on for 6 months.
Well, good for
Wow.
you. Did you have to pay any
I have no
money?
brain cells left, but and no money and no brain cells.
Did you have to pay them any money in the as a result of the mediation?
Absolutely.
It's amazing how that happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
Always has to be about money in the end. All right. Well, welcome back.
They didn't care about any compensatory ed, just about the check I was going to cut.
Yeah, that's all it's about. That's what I mean. I used to get out of bed and it cost $6,000 just to start the day.
I try to keep it less than the part that has to go to the board. That's my goal.
Yeah. That's why I said that the entree, the start used to be $6,000 just to look and go up from there. Oh, I know. Well, again, welcome back, everybody. The first thing I want to cover tonight is our weekly activities. A point I want to make on due process activity number 5 that was brought up in one of the answers this week was when one of our classmates said that AP felt like that the standard amount of punishment, maybe even the range, that they went to the lower end. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that they went to the lower end of the range on the punishment. A few years back, when I was still in the business, I used to have to do the Office of Civil Rights report for Charlotte-Mecklenburg. And one of the things that I found out was, by running the statisticals out of our own data warehouse, is that not all white and affluent kids got a break, the lower end. Some did, some didn't. But what I found was no low wealth kid ever got that break. Let me say that again. When you have a range of punishment, and usually I've got a code of conduct right here, got one that gives a range. You see what the minimum and the maximum is. This one's from Charlotte. What I found is not all white and affluent kids got the minimum. Some of them got the minimum. Some actually got the maximum. But what I did find was that low wealth kids, whether they're black, white, or didn't matter, Hispanic, free and reduced lunch kids never got the minimum. That makes it racially identifiable, or identifiable as a group, a subgroup. That's what you have to be careful of when you talk about, oh, we want to be fair and we want to make the punishment. Again, you get back to that standard of arbitrary. The good kids always get the break. The bad kids never get the break. Well, that's when you go to court and you have to produce your statisticals. That's when they get you. You don't have to prove that not every wealthy or upper class kid didn't get a break. What you have to show is, and where your statistics get you, is when no low wealth kid ever got a break. So therein lies your problem when you say we're going to give this kid a break. He's a good kid. The break never comes to certain categories of kids, I'm afraid. And then our discipline becomes racially or economically identifiable. And that violates the law of the Office of Civil Rights. So you got to be really careful. Now, to do that, as I wrote in my response to that discussion board, you've got to do inter-rater reliability. You've got to do fidelity checks or formative. You've got to look at what you're doing for discipline, and you've got to sort it out by students, by groups of students. When you have more than one person processing discipline, you got to make sure that there's consistency, and you've got to make sure that we don't always give certain kids a break and never give other kids a break. I mean, breaks have to go they have to be equally distributed among all the groups. It can't just be, that we wrote the minimum and maximum to separate the classes of kids from the wealthy and the poor. The wealthy always, or most of the time, get the minimum, the poor get the maximum. Or even if sometimes the wealthy get a range, but the poor always get the maximum. And again, that's identifiable. You got to be careful with that. And the way that you combat that is that you have to look at your data on an ongoing basis in terms of, and you have to meet regularly. What are you doing? And look at the consequences that have been given out. It's much easier if you just have one person, but even then you need to monitor that one person. Even if that one person is yourself, you need to monitor that. So again, that goes back to due process, but it also goes back to several other standards. But that's the one that, again, if you're not careful, you only give breaks to the certain groups. You only give the minimum to certain groups, and other groups always get the maximum. You have to be careful about that. And so for that reason, kind of the bottom line to the bottom line is every incident has to stand on its own, and you have to give consequences based on the incident, not on who the kid is. You have to separate the kid from, the kid from the incident. In the state reporting manual, it's very clear. We report incidents, and we give consequences based on the incident. We can't say, well, that's a good kid, they've never been in trouble before, or that kid's always in my office. No, can't do that. That violates their civil rights. It also violates the 14th Amendment to equal protection under the law. Every incident has to stand alone. Whether it's the second time you've seen this kid this week or the first time you've seen this kid all year, you have to give consequences based on the incident, not on the kid. Be very clear. When you go to court and you defend yourself by saying, well, that kid's never been in my office and he's a good kid from a good family, you just admitted your guilt. This is what the kid did. This is the penalty that carries, the consequence. That's how the law works. You're not to factor in priors. They won't let you bring in priors when you go to court. There's a reason why. That's equal protection clause. That's a violation of civil rights. So when you say this is a good kid that's never been in trouble before and he was smoking, I gave him 1 day of ISS and this kid's been caught a dozen times, I gave him 10 days OSS. No, they were both smoking. We go back to the incident.
Dr. Lim, what about the part of those policies that sometimes will say second and third offense? Like if this is
you're covered, and that's why we went back and put those in. The second and third offense part we put in the handbook in response to that, to give administrators some cover from those habitual offenders. Under those are legal. You can do that, but you got to build them in up front. I'm trying to remember. I'm old and I don't remember. I'm trying to remember the Associate General Counsel that we had when we rewrote that and put that part in, because we got hit by an OCR complaint. That's how I started this. We were doing racially identifiable. Not all wealthy white kids got a break, but all poor kids, especially minority kids, none of them ever got a break. But then you have the habitual offender part of it. So that's when we went back and wrote first offense, second offense. That gives you cover under that statute. Yes, that's why it's there.
So Dr. Lim, when two things, I'm going back to when we do DTMs, and on that form, when we're trying to get the student or a kid out of the school, they ask how many times has this student been suspended, or they ask how many times the student has been in ISS, or how many times the student has referrals. In addition to MDRs, as an EC teacher, when we do the MDRs, why do we have to put how many times they have been suspended if we should be just looking at that student?
You answered your own question in the beginning when you said DTM. A DTM is a discipline team meeting. It's prior to a hearing, and it's a chance to mediate before a hearing in order to reduce the number of students who go to hearings. It is not official. Don't be confused by everybody showing up in a necktie. It is a quasi-official team meeting. It is not a due process hearing. It's prior to, in an attempt to divert from a due process hearing. When you go to a due process hearing, none of that stuff is admissible. But a DTM is the district's attempt to avert and work on the statisticals on how many kids go to due process to make you look better as a district. We had a superintendent who didn't like the notion that we were having 2,800, 3,000 discipline hearings a year. Said, how can we make ourselves look better? Well, we'll put this pre-process in, call a DTM, a discipline team meeting, where all these things will be factored, and we'll basically offer to cut a deal with the parent in lieu of going to a due process hearing. Anything's fair game in a DTM because it's not a formal due process hearing. It's an offer of mediation. That's exactly why. If parents were smart, they'd never come to a DTM. Never. They'd say, nope, I choose to I choose to exercise my right to have a due process hearing. Nothing, but now part of it is you know, if you know your kid's guilty, you can cut a better deal in a DTM on lower level things. But you notice not all kids get a DTM. I mean, it's according to the severity of the conduct. Some of them, they go straight to hearing. Not a lot, but some. But now that is simply you know, that's simply a diversionary. It's kind of like pretrial or like we do with juveniles in the juvenile justice system. We have diversion programs. That's what that is a diversion program for juveniles to try to keep them out of due process. Makes our numbers look better as a district. That's just, you know, that's just the bottom line. All right. So again, be careful. If you're a part of a disciplinary team that more than one person is doing processing discipline, it's not about that we didn't, you know, you can defend yourself against, we didn't give every child, every non-free and reduced lunch kid, we didn't give every one of them a break, but if you never gave the disadvantaged kids economic, if you never gave any of them a break, then you're guilty right off the bat. That's an OCR violation, and you'll have to pay through the nose. All right. So that's the one this week. We've got, you know, it sounds like we're splitting hairs, but we're not. That's a big thing. All right. So looking at our weekly schedule, this is February the 5th, tonight's case study Zoom. You should be somewhere near task 3 in your OMA, just as a reminder. Now, we had an issue come up this week where to turn it in, it said that the document was too big. I've made some additional boxes where you can split it up into smaller pieces if need be. And I sent one on through a while ago. So if your OMA is too big, which happens all the time because it's a data dump, I know. If it gets too big, you can split it into individual tasks and it'll be fine. And I'll just knock those out. And I don't have grades on these. You just get a grade for this one. So it won't disrupt our grading system. I was going to say who was in the lead. I'm trying to remember who was in the lead. We got one that's got 1,600 points already. So might be Eileen. So points are coming along really well. I'm pleased with that. I did update the Maxwell on the weekly schedule. I did update that. Let me go back to that. Michelle asked about that last week, so I did update it, and so here is the updated one. It's in our shell, and I also emailed it to you. Dr. Laws said, remind you about your presentations and your papers for Maxwell. I said I would, and I have. All right, moving on. All right, so, I've been working with Seth, and we have your new DRF built in TaskStream. Yay, let me go to that. So when you log in, it's going to say EDCI SADM add-on Spring 19 is your new DRF, and when you open it up, I don't have the author view, but what it's going to have is it'll look similar to this. It'll have a CNA, a FCEP, a PE, and a PLP. Those are things that you did in the past. Now, if your CNA is in parts, you just upload them both. Some of you had like a Part A and a Part B, and some of you didn't. If you have a Part A and Part B, put them in. And now, I've got this set up where the rubrics and all that stuff won't show up, and it's just going to be a met or not met. So when you put it in there, I'm just going to click met. It's a pass-fail. Now, these two will be graded on a 1 to 4 scale. The AppSell and the OMA, if you get less than a 3, you'll get the chance for revision. I don't envision that happen, but just in case. But these will be graded on a scale. 3 is passing, a 4 is accomplished. So you got to get at least a 3. Anything 3 or better is great. 4 is just gravy. So these will be graded on a 1 to 4. These will just be met or not met. That's the way I had him set it up. We've been bandying that about all week, how that would go. So it's ready, and everybody should be 23 names in here, and there is. Look at that, right on time. So when you've gone through the OMA turned in process, and I've given you the go ahead to move on, it's ready you can go in here and start uploading your 4 that you're bringing over, and I'll just click on net on those, and then you can bring your OMA over, and then at the end of the semester, when you finish your AppSell with Dr. Laws, you can just upload it right here. He's going to have the AppSells graded, and I'm going to have the OMAs graded.
Do we have our TaskStream logins now?
He said he got all of them renewed today. I followed up before I left the office this evening. I followed up, and he said he had it done.
Okay, I thought it would generate an email, but.
So if there's a problem, send me an email, and I'll get it to Seth, or no, email it to Seth. He said we were good to go. Now, it's been wonky today, I'll tell you that, because Banner's been wonky, and Banner feeds all these programs. This morning, we could only get 9 of you to show up, and then this afternoon, we got 21 of you to show up, and it was 3 o'clock this afternoon before all 23 of you showed up. So there may be a 6-hour delay. If you didn't get in until the last batch today, it may be 6 hours before it actually shows up. So in the morning, if it's not here tonight, wait till in the morning. If it's not there in the morning, shoot me an email if you can't get in the morning. But it was supposed to, he had them in first thing this morning, but they've been slow in showing up today. But again, we've had problems. I don't know if you were on trying to get in Blackboard this afternoon, you noticed that Banner was down and Blackboard was wonky. It wouldn't let you get in your courses. And so when Banner goes down, App Extender, Ripplestone, Blackboard, and TaskStream go crazy on us, because Banner is our database that feeds all 4 of those programs. So it's back up and working now, so hopefully you'll be in here. If not now, in a few minutes, you'll be in. Anybody have any questions on how this will work? Now, the grading. We normally have an observer. We have an outside person hired to grade these. There's some debate as to whether Dr. Laws is going to use. I'm going to grade my own this semester. We normally have an outside person do that that doesn't know you, but being this is a new program, I am going to grade the OMAs. I don't know. He says that I think he wants to grade his AppSells as well. Going forward, we will probably bring in the outside evaluators starting in the fall when we get this thing finalized. But we're collecting data on it first this spring and this summer, And by fall, we'll probably bring in the people. And the reason why is simply cost. Those people charge a lot of money to come in and do that. And I have to contract them. I do have people contracted for the fall to do that. And so, but that's why I said I don't think there'll be any problem with grading this spring, because he and I will take care of it. If there's an issue on one, we'll bring in an independent evaluator if there's a problem. We always do that. So I don't anticipate any of that, but we've got it covered. We have a plan in place. It's almost like I do this for a living. All right. Any other questions? All right. We can get to the good stuff now. All right. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and close this. I don't want it to time me out. It won't let me back in later. Let me close that. Let me close this. All right. Okay, so we had a submission earlier today from Daniel, Randall, Elizabeth, and Karen. But we'll wait, since Karen's not with us. We'll wait on theirs. All right. So, who wants to be the first group to go tonight? Who wants to be the host? Don't everybody talk at once. Who's going to be first? Burning daylight.
Well, we can go.
All right, Michelle, you going to be the host?
Yeah, I'll try. Sure.
All right. Let me send this email. All right. All right, and I'm going to stop my share. And I'll stop my video. And Michelle, it should pop up on your dashboard. You can now be the host.
Okay. All right. So, please, my dog may start barking. Is April and Lane on here?
Aileen,
Hey, okay. All right.
Yes, I'm here in my car.
Oh, okay. So, we of course did what everybody else did, which was case 3. And I'll just start out by introducing some points that we discussed that were from the case. And it basically...
Well, could you hit the present thing so it makes it bigger?
Okay, how do I do that? Oh, sorry. Okay. Can everybody see it? Okay. So from the case study, it was 2 friends, Jimmy and Willie, who were observed, they were basically inseparable. A basic, typical friendship until they were observed kissing and holding hands in the school library. And everybody went into an uproar. The community was not pleased, and they began, contacting the principal, Mary Lou Haynes. And then the principal met, which when I went back to reread this, I was like, The principal met with the students first, Jimmy and Willie, and basically talk to them about what had been seen or observed, and that, just trying to deter them from doing that, holding off until they graduate high school. And then Jimmy and Willie basically stated that they would not stop, and they would plan to attend the prom. Because it was not resolved, one set of the parents then contacted the principal again and stated that they would boycott, and they had hundreds of signatures. And then another piece, which was like an eye opener for our group, was that religion was brought into the case. So now you're mixing the two. Then the principal decided to meet with the students and their parents, but not to come to a resolution, but quote unquote, to talk some sense into their children. And basically ended with, no, we're good. And why don't you do something like a day of diversity to educate not only the community, but our school and teachers. So then we wanted to talk about some of the laws or cases governing bullying and cyberbullying. And that, I believe, is that April?
Yes, I was hoping to be home by now, but I got caught in traffic in Asheville, so I'm doing this in the car.
Well, you be safe. Don't run off the road.
We've talked about Tinker and Des Moines before, but we found a couple other cases in the book there. I can't read it, so I'm really sorry, but I can't read the name. I'm not even sure I could pronounce the name, but I remember it was a Z name in Prairie.
Yes.
Indian school. So we found that one, and it was basically like a T-shirt kind of law, where this kid had worn a T-shirt opposing some gay and homosexual, lesbian activities that were happening at school, and the school took it a little too far on that end, and we found that same thing happening. Eileen found a really cool case of the Boyd County High School Gay Straight Alliance, where they had banned the Gay Straight Alliance and essentially said that they couldn't have it, and instead of actually talking with them, they actually banned all clubs. And so it was neat to look at those different things and how bullying happens, and how school law relates to those two things. And I think the next one is also mine. And hello. And as we were talking, I definitely thought it was a veiled threat, because I feel like she didn't take it to her code of conduct. If the PDA was out of the code of conduct, that's something that she could have talked to them about. But basically, she was afraid of the parents when she was talking to them, and asked them to kind of hide who they were, not giving them a chance to do the BSA. And so I thought definitely it was a veiled threat. We didn't actually discuss whether we thought yes or no, but we definitely discussed all of the things around that. But I think so, the more I read into it. So I will hand it over to Eileen, who I think has the next part.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the administrator, there wasn't any due process under the law. When we look at the case as far as student rights, there is a law probably against PDA, and so the students, it doesn't matter if it's boy, boy, girl, girl, boy, girl. The PDA stands for whatever gender. It's the same. Dress code, it's the same. If you're a boy wearing a dress, the dress code's the same. And so for the administrator, I really think she needed to get a reality check. If this were me, I would have had my legal team come in and probably set a standard, and maybe have some sort of training, sensitivity training for the faculty and staff. Certainly would not have called the students in without the parents. And if, according to, what was it, Boyd County, if they want to have a gay straight alliance, go for it. If the other side wants to have a anti-gay whatever, go for it. But I think before I started any clubs, really should have a sit down about the law. And when you talk about the law, I think that kind of gets some of the emotion out of this thing. I have to follow the law. We as a school have to follow the law, and this is what the law states. I will not deprive anybody of due process. And I think that's kind of what we were looking at what we would do. I don't know. Okay. As far as prom, again, due process. They have the right to go to the prom with whomever they want. And if the two girls, one wants to dress in a tux and one wants to dress in a dress, that's fine. And if the two boys want to dress in a dress, that's fine. Again, they have the right under due process to dress as they want. And, you know, I think part of the pushback was her, you know, oh, just wait, or, you know, this isn't right. And yeah, but anyways, that's kind of what we thought.
So, in conclusion, when we were talking about putting ourselves into the principal's position and being proactive instead of reactive, this is just some of the things that we came up with, as well as some websites that actually provide lesson plans for teachers to utilize within their classrooms, as well as if you had private groups or you going out into the community. Some of those things was, of course, provide training for the teachers, parents, and the community. But even before it gets to the school level, it definitely needs to be mandated or developed on the district level. One thing that we do at West Charlotte, when we had to have all of our students go through the bullying training, we provided the staff with training first, and then we provided that via their Chromebooks, the students training, and just educating them on what cyberbullying is, what bullying is, and what you as a student could do to protect yourself as well as protect your friend. Establishing and enforcing rules and policies that clearly describe how students are expected to be treated and how they should treat one another. Another thing is to have restorative circles. Excuse me. And through that process, it's because it's a very fine line between defining what bullying is. And we have come to that problem at West Charlotte. So what we have implemented is restorative circles, where we bring both parties in, but they of course have to agree. And there are a set of guidelines that we have to follow. And it's really helping the students implement solving their own issue without it going to the bullying, especially on social media. And then one thing, just to end everything, is when we went back to the book, and on page 380, and it was talking a lot about bullying and the different cases. And again, it's about being proactive instead of reactive, and developing different probably situations in which staff can go through and work through to come up with ways or protocols to help students not be bullied. And these are our references and questions, remarks, concerns, and that's it for us.
Okay. Anybody have anything? All right. Excellent job. All right. I want to go back to the actual, let's see if I can get here. No, that's not it. I'll have to go here and open it back up. All right. You hit all the right notes. And I'll kind of review those as soon as I pull this up. Here's was the tricky part that you folks got right away. Okay. All right. She conveyed to the boys and their parents public displays of affection and their attention to attend the prom. Those are two completely separate things. And as Eileen pointed out, there are rules against public. The principal just, this school was just asleep at the wheel all the way through. They started out with, as I told you, when I had the young man in high school that wore a dress, I did not send him home because he was wearing a dress. His dress was too short. The girls complained that they couldn't wear dresses that short, so it wasn't about him wearing the dress. He just had to wear one long enough to cover all of his critical parts, just like the girls did. But the problem was they ignored the PDAs. And as you pointed out, as Michelle said, you got to be proactive. So I pulled up for you. Here's a code of conduct. Says clearly, excessive displays of affection are specifically prohibited. Doesn't say boy on boy or girl on girl or boy girl. It's everybody. They can't be kissing and holding hands in the library. There's where this thing, that's when you went off the tracks. That was the first thing. You didn't address their behavior. They have to have the same standard of behavior as everybody else. And that's how this thing got started going down the wrong way. We look at the state discipline reporting manual. It also says that excessive display of affection, 063 right there, is you are supposed to deal with that as a school administrator. Remember antecedent behaviors, little things become big things. This is a perfect example. You let the little stuff slide till it got too big, and then it was too big to handle. It's a perfect example of that. So the inappropriate behavior should have been addressed regardless of gender. I had no, then to threaten them, yes. When she said, I'm afraid of what might happen to you if you come to the prom, that's blaming the victim. And that's in Title IX. You can't blame the victim. There's also a part of Title IX on hostile workplace environment. By allowing them to do their public displays of affection, you have inflamed the rest of the people there, and you have violated their right to come to work and to school in a place that's free from a hostile environment. Now, I might have told you the story. I had a young teacher. The insurance man was a young man. He was after school meeting as doing schools with the Horace Mann representative, and the insurance agent asked the young teacher out on a date. And I got a complaint the next day, hostile workplace. Not from a teacher who got asked out, but from another older teacher who heard it. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for why but she said that, but made it a hostile workplace. And she was right. And so we acted upon that. In the end, the insurance man got banned from coming to campus. You have to take those things seriously. Now that she might have been old and bitter or whatever is immaterial. It happened to campus. You have to deal with those things. And they didn't deal with those things. And then it got sideways on them. And that's what happens when you, this is the perfect example of what I preach all the time in antecedent behavior. There's parts of Title IX in this. There's civil rights. There's due process. We've covered all those notes. But the big takeaway from me on this one that I want you to get is if you ignore stuff, it won't go away. This notion, can you wait till after graduation? we don't really want to deal with this now. We might have to do some training or spend some time. We might be inconvenienced. Can you just take this out? You know, can you just wait? No. This principal got herself in this trouble, you know, because they didn't deal with it up front. They let the small things become the big things. And that's the theory of antecedent behaviors in school discipline. And you know, she dug herself a hole, and then she only did it. You know, when you dig yourself a hole, quit, stop. She just kept digging. You know, bail threat, if you come, people gonna be mad. Not handling, not doing the proper work in terms of training, sensitivity training, Title IX training for the faculty or the staff or the students, not having community, not doing the right. She just kept right on digging. Or as Dr. Hamilton says, when your horse dies, get off. Don't just keep beating the horse. You know, I always say when you dig, you know, when you dig yourself a hole, stop digging. Don't double down and make it worse. This principal doubled down and made it worse. But yes, you've hit there's two issues here, and you hit them both, but they go back to that one sentence there. You didn't deal with the PDAs as you should have, but you can't ban them from the prom. You can't punish them for your inability to do your job, and that's basically what she was trying to do. Principal, rather than do her job or have their faculty or have her administrative team do their job, they tried to punish the victim. That never goes well. This was one that you better believe if you know, if I was still pulling the lever in the central office, we would settle this one long before it got to court, because we'd get thrashed in court over this one. So many violations of the law in this. This would not go well. This would not go well. So, you know, April made some good points when she pointed out that they missed the PDAs. But yes, y'all got this one right. Y'all hit all the right notes. Thing to remember, deal with it up front. It may be more than you want to. I was in that discussion this week. Some things, here's kind of the bottom line. And I was in a discussion with this one this week. I wish I was more articulate and I can explain it to you better, but you just have to know what's important. Certain things that pop up in your schools, you better deal with it now. It's only going to get worse. Every week in the administrative team meeting, I had 6 APs and 2 administrative assistants that handled discipline. Every week, one of the things that I talked to them about was you got to know what's important. Kids are going to make you deal with things whether you want to or not. You can deal with it up front when it's at the small level, you know, or you know, the antecedent behavior theory, or you can wait till it just becomes a big mess and we have to deal with it. To Michelle's point, that she and I, when we started this conversation tonight, there might have been a chance some way earlier in the day when the initial conflict started in your school today to deal with it, but you know, I don't know. I wasn't there, but my guess is there might have been a chance to mediate early on. But if you didn't, if you missed it, sometimes it doesn't manifest itself. But one of the things that I used to have the APs do was meet all the students coming off the bus in the morning. And by the time we got into the cafeteria, you could kind of tell who was going to be a problem early on. We didn't always get lucky. But what I found is, you know, the harder we worked, the luckier we got. That we paid attention to the little things in the morning early, and it couldn't be one of them, well, I got to do a teacher evaluation first thing this morning. I don't have time to deal with these 2 knuckleheads. Well, they're going to take you time. You can handle it before it gets out of control and influences other behaviors in your school, or you can let it go and hope it goes away. But hope's not a plan. It's not going to happen. They're going to make you deal with them. Just like these 2 here, Willie and his partner here. They're going to make you deal with them. I mean, they started out doing the PDAs for a reason. They started out for a reason. Now, you can deal with it at that level and handle it and do the right things in your building, or you can let it get sideways like this one is. And so that's my takeaway for this one. Excellent presentation. You hit all the right notes. You pulled up all the right cases. Excellent, excellent job. All right, who's next?
We can go next, Dr. Lamb.
All right, Tricia, we're gonna share. You're gonna be the host.
Yes.
Very good. All right, I'll change to you. I'll stop my share. I'll turn my video off. Yours should come on shortly. Very good.
All right. I think Renee's going to get us started with the overview.
Right. This has already been mentioned, and I'm going to run through it as well. So Red Creek High School, Jimmy and Willie are seen kissing and holding hands in school library. Mary Lou is the principal, and she meets with the two students and says, the students say to her, "This is who we are. Our parents are comfortable with it. There's no intention from them of refraining from public displays of affection. They intend on going to the prom." So we'll deal with these in a minute, but I'm just kind of stating the cases. So she's already gotten phone calls. Jerry and Jenny Hudson have a son and daughter at Red Creek. So a phone call demanding that Mary Lou take action or they're going to boycott the school. Already have 100 signatures on the petition. Next slide. And then trouble continues, I guess, not really begins. But Mary Lou meets with Jimmy and Willie and their parents. She conveys public displays of affection and their intentions to attend prom were disruptive to the learning process and subjected them to possible harm from classmates. Mary Lou urges them to wait until after graduation. She urges the parents to be sent to the boys. She gets emails from the parents. Mary Lou comments were seen as a veiled threat that infringes on Jimmy and Willie's First Amendment rights of speech. So she meets with Jimmy and Willie again, and they pretty much tell her their intentions of having a day of diversity, a day of silence, and they want to start a Gay-Straight Alliance student club. So quite the mess she's gotten herself into.
All right, and I'm going to talk a little bit just about the background of the law and the reading that we had for this particular section. So, of course, the Gitlow and Tinker cases affirmed free speech rights are protected as long as they do not present a clear and present danger or threaten material disruption of the process. And so principals have to be careful to create a safe environment, but not overly restrict the rights of their student body. The book noted that there is a tension between the school's need to maintain an orderly environment and the student's right as a citizen and a human being. So we have to be cognizant of that. In terms of the rights to symbolic expression, it did talk a lot about that in that particular section. Conduct by student in class or out that for any reason disrupts classwork or involves substantial disorder is not protected by the constitutional guarantee of freedom of speech. So principals kind of have to ask themselves, does the expression that we might be looking at cause a health, a safety, some kind of hazard? Are the rules based on objective needs? Will those rules, are they arbitrary, as we've been talking about in many of our case studies? So in the case of our scenario, the principal should have addressed that PDA up front and really gotten ahead of that problem before it escalated. The book goes through a lot of these different ones that don't necessarily pertain to this case, goes through all the physical gestures and obscenities and, gang regalia and that sort of thing. I thought one of the cases that kind of jumped out to me in terms of, say, cyberbullying and social media was the Kowalski versus Berkeley County Schools case, which upheld the right of school administrators to discipline students for online speech that caused a school disruption or caused school officials to reasonably believe it would trigger a disruption. So that kind of went back to that weekly assignment that we had as well. So
Cyberbullying, yes.
Yeah.
Falls under that same that if it causes disruption, you do have the right to address it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was good to read that in the book because that kind of affirmed what Dr. Lamb had been talking to us about. And also in that same section, they talked about, that's the written communication portion, but that the board can't allow the presentation of one side of an issue but prohibit the presentation of another viewpoint, which I think takes us into that freedom of expression and the heckler's veto, which I know Kim's going to talk a little bit about in a moment. But that notion that whatever's going on takes away the rights of the speaker and then gives more power to the people who are offended by that speech. So we kind of get into the case with, the people that are sort of protesting these students and their behavior. And then, of course, at the end, kind of them talking about their day of diversity that they're wanting to have in terms of freedom of assembly, which, of course, is protected by the First Amendment, and that really all districts should probably have a plan to deal with any kind of peaceful or disruptive unauthorized assemblies, just in case those happen without principal knowledge. And I'll hand it over to Kim.
Oh, just before that plan about the assembly, that should be in your crisis plan, by the way.
Okay.
All right, so when I read this about this veiled threat, I really thought about, Mary Lou, and yeah, she had already really kind of dug herself in a hole by the point where she met with the kids without parents, and so I didn't see it as much as a threat, but almost as she was like cautious, like begging them to please just take this away from her, because this has so many different points to it, like we've kind of talked about already. But yeah, at the point where, you tell a parent to talk some sense into your kids, that's not okay. It does imply that the relationship makes no sense. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. And I'm sure that probably fueled that fire there. But definitely, yeah, I'm a middle school teacher, and PDA that's just, I go around saying no PDA all the time, and the kids are like, what's PDA? I get to explain it a lot. But it's not okay, and it should have been addressed from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I thought this had a lot of different points to it, so that's why there's all these bullet points here, because I love a bullet point list. But basically, if one group of people are allowed to do things, then another group of people are allowed to do the same things. I mean, to me, that's common sense. It had to go in front of a court of law to become, formal with Tinker. But, heterosexual couples, if they can hold hands and they can kiss, then, homosexual couples can do the same thing. But again, that should have been addressed, and probably a lot of this would have been staved off. Again, if you let heterosexual couples attend the prom, homosexual couples can attend the prom. Again, same kind of deal. Definitely important, though. She realized there was definitely threats to this couple, so it would have also been in her responsibility to make sure that she had enough teacher and school resource officer presence there at the prom to stave off any threats to anybody, and to kind of keep things at bay. She couldn't cancel the prom because of homosexual couple. That's what goes in there to me with the heckler's veto. You can't cancel something because you're afraid of what might happen. But if what you're afraid might happen happens, then you have to deal and punish the appropriate parties, not the victims. Again, with clubs, if there are non-curricular clubs already, then the GSA had to be allowed. If there were other school-wide events that were allowed to happen, then their day of diversity, their day of silence, would be allowed. And as far as the boycott, I thought about that. I thought, well, gosh, Mary Lou, that might not be a bad thing if parents boycott your school, they don't show up. Might leave you alone for just a little bit. But, with Tinker there, a boycott would definitely cause a disruption. So, I mean, they would be, of course, have a right to boycott and to protest or whatever they wanted to do, somewhere else, but not on her campus. And then the last two questions there, how should Mary Lou respond to the concerns of the parents? My screen's covering up their last name, the Hudson parents. just reminding parents, and I know as teachers and administrators, a lot have to do this because of FERPA. You have to remind parents that you can't discuss somebody else's child. You can't discuss what another child has done. But, you can gladly discuss her children, her concerns with her personal children there. And again, the prom, I think I already covered that there. You can't ban them from the prom. So, 4 questions.
Okay, and then I'm going to go into addressing or minimizing cyberbullying, and I liked the clip art that they had. But if anything is verbal, physical, or social, and it only happens one time between equals, it is not bullying. But bullying is repeated, intentional, and an imbalance of power.
Mm-hmm. And again, remember, the cyberbullying law was not overturned. It just addressed what Kancy was just talking about. If you're in a Twitter war and you start losing, you can't claim that you've been bullied. If it's back and forth and you participate, and then when it turns ugly or you start losing the Twitter war, you can't. You're not protected on that one. That's the only thing that changed in the cyberbullying statute. But for some reason, people have, especially administrators that are like this lady that want to hide, don't want to step up. Oh, well, that law's been, no, that law's not been struck down. If it materially disrupts your school, or if one child is being bullied, then you are legally required to be involved in that, to take action. But that's a good point that Kancy just made. It can't be folks that are going back and forth, and then one side, is getting the better of the other, and then we claim bullying.
And when adults stop bullying and quickly, consistently stop the bullying behavior, they send a message that it's not acceptable. And research says that this can stop bullying behavior over time. Parents, school staff, and other adults can also prevent bullying by talking about it, building a safe school environment, and creating a community-wide bully prevention strategy. Teachers and school administrators can be knowledgeable and observant. They can involve students and parents, set positive expectations about behavior for students and adults, and all of these things will help minimize any disruptions. Beware of cyberbullying. Online bullying doesn't necessarily harm young people. The study said that 38% of those bullied said that such incidents made them very upset or afraid. The rest of the kids were like, oh, it's online, so I'm not even worried about it. It might not even be real. But bullying was most likely to cause worry when involved offline contact or an adult harasser. This distress could have an impact offline. Young people who are the victims are more likely to report social problems and interpersonal victimization. Being victimized also increases their chance of harassing peers online themselves, and that 68% of cyberbullying victims spoke up about their harassment to friends, parents, or other authorities.
And we've got our notes and our Zoom meeting and our references.
Excellent. All right. I want to add to one of the things that last slide, or the slide before last, had in it, and I've mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again. It happens a lot in high school. One of the ways to stop bullying, or to stem the tide and decrease bullying in schools, is how teachers interact with students in class. One of these things that I see online, it pops up on my Yahoo account all the time, is these hilarious notes that teachers write on students' paper when they send them back to it. And most of them are snarky, sarcastic comments. That's one of the things you really have to work with your faculties on as a leader, as a school leader, is their interaction with students. Sarcasm is not humor. It is passive-aggressive behavior. It's a form of bullying. And I tell you, it becomes pervasive in some high schools, the way that teachers, tease or make fun of kids in a sarcastic way. Oh, I was just kidding. Or, what is it, with all due respect, if you say that, you can say the most outrageously racist, misogynist, and discriminatory things as long as you say with all due respect, no. Or if you do it supposedly in a humorous way, there's no humor in passive aggressive bullying. And that's one of the things you really have to work hard with high school faculties on, especially, is their interaction with students. You have to be above that. So if you want to stem the tide in bullying and that kind of behavior, it starts with your faculty, how they treat students in terms of the interaction, the verbal communication between them. I believe that firmly.
We kind of had an example like that at my school recently. We had a teacher that apparently had posted some kind of comic strip that had something to do with obesity or sugar or something of that nature on his website.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it offended a student's parent that had, the student had diabetes. And they came up several times and they wanted the teacher to have sensitivity training. And yeah, it was a whole thing at our school. So yeah, we can identify.
Yeah, prior to being on the main campus in Boiling Springs, I've worked for Gardner Webb for 8 years after retiring out of public schools. I was in Statesville, Charlotte, and then when we closed the Statesville campus and repurposed the Charlotte campus, I came to the main campus at Boiling Springs, and I was not in Craig Hall. I will say that for 2 years, I was not in Craig Hall, the education building. I was in an overflow classroom office building elsewhere on campus, and there was a professor in another department who, during his 10 hours of mandatory office hours in undergraduate, they have a 10-hour mandatory, they have to be there during the week, is his form of social protest. He sat and cut out cartoons during that 10 hours every week and posted them on his door. That was my first problem with him, when it's all I could do to keep up with all that I needed to do. I mean, we come to work, our jobs during the day and do our classes at night, and he didn't seem to, but the bigger problem that I had was the content of the cartoons that he cut out to Patricia's. I thought they were very insulting to undergraduate students. It was basically students being, dumb things that kids did or making fun of undergraduate kind of thing. And that was the cartoons, like these stupid undergraduates. Then he was the very person who got up at the faculty meeting last spring and asked if there was any movement on his idea of being able to do his office hours virtually from home, since no students ever came by to see him. Now, do you think he put 2 and 2 together? Would you go by and see somebody who posted all these cartoons on their door that basically made fun of and derided young people? And then he wondered why nobody was coming to, it's kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. He wondered why nobody was coming by his office to see him during his office hour. Well, I looked at those cartoons and I thought, boy, I wouldn't get anywhere near this fellow. It's obvious that he hates young people. I know that his intent was to be sarcastic and ironic. I know, irony is a big thing with millennials and hipsters now, is everybody wants to be ironic. But irony, again, form of sarcasm. And he wondered why nobody ever stops by to see him. Well, you just, it doesn't take but a minute to look at your door and figure out why. That's what we're talking about. And I see high school teachers do a lot of that as well. And they're the worst. And so that's one of those things that you got to be in tune to as an administrator in the building, is what kind of dialogue goes back and forth between teachers and students. It's not always just the screaming and yelling and cursing part. It's that every day, the give and take. What is the tenor of that on a daily basis? All right. Who's going to do our last one?
I'm going to drive.
All right. Elizabeth's going to drive. Excellent. Okay. I'm going to reclaim the host. Now I'm going to go to Elizabeth and make her the host. Yes. I'll stop my share. And Elizabeth, there we go.
Okay, so just going to get us kicked off. I'm not sure if Karen has got a chance to get on yet, but we will.
Yeah, she's here.
Oh, okay. Hi, Karen. All right. So now I can't see anything but my screen. So here we go. Daniel, are you taking this first one?
I'm here, and yes, I'll be glad to. All right. So when we just hit the questions in order, would you consider Mary Lou's comments a veiled threat? We discussed a lot of this, but we didn't see it necessarily as a veiled threat. Like, her initial statement was reasonable when she told the parents, that they could not have public displays of affection because that's for anyone in the school. It didn't matter. And that would be in line with the policy, and she wasn't imposing any action toward them. It's the conversation after that has implications regarding the law and the ethical paradigms, which were inappropriate and should not have occurred. When you look at, we felt like maybe she was making the parents aware of what's happening, and that was more of a concern. But and we pulled a lot of this too. We went to page 41 in the school leadership case to kind of define to see if we're in the right spot or not. And it even stated that we really shouldn't see it as a veiled threat. The conversation itself, yes, was not appropriate.
Right. We just said that that the initial discussion about it, because she didn't take any action, it wasn't arbitrary. However, she should have taken action, just like all the other groups have said. And we agree with the last group that might have solved a lot of her hole that she then dug with all of the legal and ethical issues that she then began to construe for herself in all of the other conversations after that.
Okay. And then when we look at her responsibilities under the law, I know the prior group broke down a lot of like how everything fit into the cases. But as far as her responsibility, I think as an administrator would be to like alert her superiors to the controversy that was happening, maintain contact with the superintendent, board attorneys, and public relations office. Parents and students' concerns must be addressed. And then there needs to be a plan that would protect students' rights and provide for a safe environment for all. Okay, so addressing the parents. Again, according to the book and going in and digging through all that, getting the advice from the board attorney before speaking with them would have been a smart thing to do. Making sure that she explained to parents that under the Equal Access Act and other legal guidelines that the school cannot deny equal access or discriminate against any group of students. It's also, she needs to let the parents know that it's her responsibility to protect the rights of all students and provide a safe environment. And that she can't, a parent, even though they've got a complaint, she cannot come in and she cannot discuss someone else's child with them. That can't happen. And as far as them attending the prom, yes, absolutely. If you look at I just listed the First Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the Equal Access Act, the Title 9 of the Education Amendment, and then Tinker and Des Moines, and that's just a few, but all of these are addressing is free speech, equal protection, equal rights, not being able to prohibit gender-based, there can't be gender-based discrimination if you're receiving federal funds. Just because a view's unpopular does not give you the reason or a strong enough reason to deny a student those rights.
And then I took a look at different case law from the Chapter 5 from the Principal's Quick Reference Guide, and there were some interesting ones in there. Some of our colleagues have already brought up Getlow versus New York and Tinker versus Des Moines, but there was also, West Virginia v. Barnett, which was kind of that first time that the free speech case was heard by the Supreme Court, and I thought it was interesting that it was way back in 1943 even. It was as a result of an issue over flag salutation, but just led to the understanding that, First Amendment rights don't end at the schoolhouse door, as all the lawyers, continue to say. And then, not just Tinker and Des Moines, but then also Gitlow rulings just supported the necessity for maintaining an orderly function of a school as a mitigating factor to the rights of free speech. So both of those cases just supported school administrators and school districts' rights to just have to maintain a safe and orderly functioning of the school, and should free speech and that be in conflict with each other, gave school administrators some leeway with how they manage things. I thought it was an interesting citation in the chapter, a little more recent. I guess that's getting pretty old these days, but just noting the issue, and I think our colleagues brought that up too, of the increase in school violence and the focus on school safety have really complicated this whole issue for school administrators for managing this line between free speech and safe schools. And I think that is what the administrator in this sense got herself caught into very early, is her sense of trying to maintain peaceful and orderly schools and having safe schools. And then instead of handling it just via policy and procedure, she kind of relied on kind of pleading, as our former colleague said too, with the parents and sort of just trying to make it go away. And I think it just, I noted in my reflection too, that it's so important to separate your personal views in situations like this from your professional responsibilities. So, regardless of how she felt personally about the issue, or whether she agreed or disagreed with, either set of parents or either sets of students, just making sure that she can back up her actions and her conversations with either policy or law, just really reminded me of how case law really can support, what we're doing in schools every day from the administrative side.
I pulled up the 4 paradigms justice. I think there's a sense arbitrary, capricious, that she was just she didn't want to deal with it and create waves. So that was the first one. It went against justice there. She might have showed some care for the boys a little bit, didn't want them being harassed, but I think her more care was her own.
Yes.
Critique. I found a site, Troy, from 2009, said the ethics of critique required decision makers to confront the issues of diversity and inequality. Then she didn't show that.
No.
And then ethics of profession, she fell short safeguarding democracy, equity, and diversity.
No, this excellent job there. I read this when Elizabeth turned this one in earlier tonight, and I was reading through it before class. And I wanted to highlight what an excellent job on this, on bringing in the ethical paradigm. Wonderful.
And I'm still at school, y'all, so you're going to hear announcements and so forth.
It's like, Karen, we can handle it if it's too.
I'm multitasking.
Yeah, probably. I was going to say, I think all we can hear is announcements. So that's okay. Just addressing that, minimizing cyberbullying, just like our colleagues, we said everything just needs to be proactive. So creating the supportive school climate and empowering students from the beginning, before any of this has ever happened, is crucial to getting this to be over and done with more quickly. If the climate of the school is a place where this stuff is not tolerated, then this stuff will extinguish itself pretty quickly among the students, at least. And just proactive, like I said, with bullying campaigns, tolerance, and so not just anti-bullying, but also inclusive practices and tolerance, making sure that students and parents are aware of all the legal ramifications. I always think that it's important to highlight some of the biggies for parents in the code of conduct and students, and bullying and cyberbullying is a good one. Investigating all complaints and taking disciplinary action, being consistent in align with school policy. So getting those due process rights in for anyone. Also in all of this, we talked about some after her own actions and not handling the PDA. There's actually a potential for more than either of the two boys in the relationship didn't really do or say anything other than just breaking the PDA rule. But some of the other parents and students were beginning to teeter on things that were going to be things that the principal had to address. So investigating, all those claims and following through with due process, would be so important. And then other than the references we've already cited within, these were some additional ones that we used in either consultation or citation.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome, Karen. I get it, girl. I've been there.
Very good. All right. How many of you are in elementary education? Excellent. Excellent job tonight on all of these. All right. Let me see. We're still viewing.
Yeah.
Let me reclaim the host. There we go. You are the host now. All right. So here we're back. All right. How many of you are now or have ever worked in elementary school? Got a chat here. What's this? I'm in high school. All right. April's in high school. So we got how many? 2 or 3? 3 or 4? All right. You should know the answer to the pop quiz tonight. What is object permanence? Don't Google it now. You can Google it in a minute. Anybody know what object permanence is?
It's when something remains even if you can't see it anymore.
Well, that's exactly right. So little kids, when you first get them, in element, especially in pre-K or K, they think if they close their eyes, you can't see them. If they can't see you, you can't see them. You're supposed to grow out of that by the time you're 7. If we go to the Piaget stages, you're supposed to grow out of that by the time you're 7. You're supposed to understand that closing your eyes doesn't mean that they can still see you. Well, there's a lot of administrators, to kind of get back on the serious side, who never made it. They defy that law. They don't seem to understand. They think if they close their eyes to it, everybody else can't see it. And I'm telling you, it won't get better. It won't go away. Ignoring it does. What is it? 85% of the things that are wrong with you physically, if you leave them alone, they'll eventually cure themselves. The other 15% will kill you. Well, in the school business, it all turns into the 15%, unfortunately, that kills you. It's more than that in the school business. It's kind of the other way around. And just ignoring it won't make it go away. Closing your eyes to it doesn't mean that people can't see you and your ineffectiveness. In an attempt not to deal with it, it got out of control, and then everybody was mad. A lot of times when you take a position, you alienate certain communities. But if you're on the side of the angels, if you're doing the right thing, then everybody understands. But eventually, what happens is you anger everybody. When you end up not doing the right thing, you end up with everybody mad at you. And so that's kind of the takeaway from this. Antecedent behaviors, you let a little thing become a big thing. You didn't do the right thing. You thought if you closed your eyes that it would go away, that object permanence, like a 5-year-old, and it gets away from you. I'm pleased that you folks are doing your scholarly research, you're digging in the laws, and you're seeing the right thing to do. But this case is about not only knowing the right things to do, but then having the courage of your conviction to follow through, to do the unpopular things, to handle the little things before they become the big things. Knowing what's important. Again, I'd like to be able to tell you there's a formula, that there's some magic way to know when students get off the bus in the morning, what things you better handle and what things are just insignificant and what things they're going to make it be a priority in your day. It's just a feel. It's just something you have to develop. I always told people I think that's why I grew hair on my back so it would stand up when I knew things were going to get bad. Not to be ugly, but I mean that seriously. I mean, I didn't have any on my neck because it all fell out. So it's kind of, some people the hair, the hair on the back of your neck stands up. You just know. You just know that this is not going to go away. This is one of those that's going to get sideways. You have to develop that sense, that feel. Yes, you need to know the laws, and you can study and learn those. But there's also that sense of, boy, I don't feel exactly right about that. I better handle that. That's what will separate you from being an assistant principal and being a principal and moving up. Assistant principals are just technician levels. They just keep their head down and plow through. If you're going to be a true leader, you have to develop that sense of what's important. You have to understand what's important in your organization and deal with the little things before they come the big thing. All right, does anybody have anything to share for the good of the group? Anything that I need to do that I've not done? I'm trying to make sure that I get your feedback on a daily basis. I grade morning and night. I'm very pleased with the work that you're doing. I'm always excited when you put things in that I get to read. I'm looking forward to your reflections on this week. I love those. It gives me some insight into how well we're doing here, some feedback, some assessment on how well we're doing. We teach these courses to folks with master's degrees and during the master's program, but I've given you some little more difficult case studies than I give them, but I'm very pleased at what you're doing with these. You are showing that you are truly doctorals and doctors, and you're doing a great work.
I just wanted to, go ahead.
The email that we got about the interview.
Yes.
What exactly is that, or what do we do?
Okay, I'll cover that in a minute. Eileen, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm still having a hard time getting those into separating them. And I was looking, the task 2 is like maybe only 7 pages.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe if it was because Blackboard was being wonky, but I've tried both at my PC at work and my Apple at home. And I tried cutting and pasting it, and then I lost all the formatting. I tried doing it through the Google Drive. I don't know what to do.
Just submit it in TaskStream. Put it all together and submit it in TaskStream. It's come out fine.
Okay. All right.
I was able to grade the other one today, so you're good. Just put it all together and submit it in TaskStream.
All right. Thank you.
I showed you earlier. All right. So this is the last thing for tonight. Cancy is right. So what I do every semester for our completing candidates, whether they're master students or whether they're the add-on licensure 6-year students that are getting, I do an evening where I talk to you about the process of interviewing for your first administrative job. There's 4 different levels of interviews. The most important thing is to know what you're walking into. Is it a cattle call? Is it a group interview? Is it a one-on-one with the principal? Is it a superintendent interview? Where in the process, there's different things that you're expected to be able to know and do for each of those. And so that's what I do. I spend an hour. We start with Gallup Strength Finder and Perceiver. If you're asked those series of questions, I can't share them because they're copyrighted, but those series of questions, like one of those would be, this would be in like an applicant pool district. If you're in a district that has an applicant pool, they have to weed through the applicants, and so they would put you through something like Perceiver, and they would ask you a question like, if it paid the same, would you rather be an assistant principal or a teacher if it paid exactly the same? And the answer, of course, is assistant principal. You're interviewing for a job working with adults. Or they might hide it a little bit and say, if it paid exactly the same, would you prefer to work with adults or students? And if you say students, they'll let you stay in the classroom. Because the answer is you're looking to change careers. There's 6 of those kind of landmine questions. Another one is, are you always on time? And the answer is yes. Most of the time I'm early. Because school runs on what? Time. Bell ring, go to class. Bell ring, go to next class. So that's kind of it's Gallup, Strength Finder, Perceiver. They have that. There's also a virtual interview. The trick is to put notes around your screen so it doesn't look like you're reading your notes. On virtual interviews, there's also a data set. I've got that one. It's basically the app sell, the process we put you through. They give you a data set and you have to do a mini app sell. So y'all should be able to do that one. Once we go through that, you've already done that anyway. The group interview basically is with lay people. I have a set of slides, PowerPoints, where you take educational jargon and you convert it to language that lay people understand. I set up and ran the Cleveland County Principal of the Year interviews for them this past spring. I don't know if I'll be invited back or not. We'll see how the person we chose did. But I set that up because they wanted a different outcome. And one of the things that one of the young fellows that came in and was one of the candidates for Principal of the Year, he kept saying to this lady who appeared just to be a normal housewife, nothing wrong with being a normal housewife. She was about 8 months pregnant, and he just figured, she was just somebody from there in the community. And he kept saying, but, he'd use terms like EVOS and M-class and things like that. But he'd say, but you don't understand that. And when he left, that lady said, how many times did that man call me stupid? I said, I believe I counted 6. She was an attorney in Charlotte who lives in Shelby. She didn't take very kindly to being called dumb, basically. So what we teach you to do is we teach you to convert, the jargon that we use in our business where lay people can understand it. And if you're doing a group interview with parents and community members, then we have the one for principals, the most likely questions they're going to ask you. You can use your jargon in there, but the landmine question that principals will ask you in a one-on-one interview is to give you your strengths and weaknesses. That's the landmine question. I'll tell you how to avoid that one. It's really simple. All your strengths should be dispositional, things that are not going to change as a fully formed adult. I'm honest, I'm caring, I'm ethical, I'm responsible, I'm on time, I'm planned, I'm prepared. These things won't change. You can depend on me. Your weaknesses have to be things that are experience-based. I don't know how to do teacher. I haven't been trained to enter data into NCWise yet or Power School, but I will get trained immediately. You know what you don't know. I haven't been certified to do teacher observations yet, but I know that's very important so I can hold up my end on McGrill. We divide up, how they divide up all the observations for teachers. Well, if one person's not certified, then everybody has to pick up their slack so your weaknesses are things that are just based on inexperience that you can correct quickly and easily. Your strengths are things that won't change. Don't say, I had one come in and say, well, I'm not a morning person. We were early start high school. How stupid are you? I'm not hiring you. But that's the kind of thing that, it's kind of an IQ test, that strength and weaknesses question. We go over those things. And then the superintendent interviews where the superintendent's not going to ask you to sketch your plan for 3 lunch shifts. They're going to ask you big ticket items like 21st century skills. And I've got a really good article, a good how-to on, because they're going to ask you, how are you going to implement 21st skills? It's a really good article on how to implement 21st century skills. And I also have the future ready students, what they'll look like if we do it correctly. Some of the big ticket items like that the superintendent's going to talk to you about. And so that's what I do to try to prepare you. The big thing is for you to recognize, this is this kind of interview. I have an in-basket activity that's a reasoning activity that they do when they have an applicant pool. Winston-Salem used to use it, where you get 21 emails and you have to categorize them. You have to basically tell what you'll do. One's about public, we talked about tonight. You can't talk about other people's kids or, public information. And it's from a reporter wanting to come and do an interview with you and maybe interview some kids. You don't handle that at all. You have to know that you never speak to the press, that all those requests go to your public information officer. So that's the correct answer on that one. But then they have an overall, it's like a contest. They have a quadrant. and you have to categorize each of those 21 emails as some combination of urgent and important. It's urgent, you know, it's important, not urgent, important, urgent, urgent, and important, urgent, not important. All right, so in that quadrant, in quadrant 3 is urgent but not important. Think about that one for a minute. Can something be urgent if it's not important? So if you put any of the 21 in quadrant 3, they won't even bother to read what you're going to do with all 21. They turn it over and look. If you've got something in quadrant 3, guess what happens to you? That was the landmine. They just throw yours away and don't bother. They don't bother to take the hour to read it or look at the quality of your responses. You obviously aren't a rational person if you think something can be urgent, but it's not important. And so those are the kinds of things. We lead you through that kind of stuff to get you prepared to go in for an administrative interview, which is much different than they won't. There's beginning to be more of the demonstrate your ability with data, and I've got a PowerPoint for that as well. But you know, it's a little bit different than what you've experienced before as a teacher or a curriculum person. And the main thing is recognize what you're going to be walking into, and so that you're not surprised or that you're not taken aback or called unaware. Know what kind of interview you're walking into. Okay. All right. So if you'd like to join me, if not, I'll just post the video. It takes 1 hour.
Question.
Yes.
Can we record that Zoom meeting?
I'll record it and send you the link.
Awesome. That'd be great. I'd love to look at it more than just next week. So.
Sure. I record all those and then I give them to you. You can have them. But a lot of good questions come out of those sessions. So it'll be all the folks that are finishing this spring that are, you know, that before long we'll start having the interview season. Normally kicks off about middle of March, 1st of April. We start, you know, the job postings start coming out, and they start, especially in the larger districts that do an applicant pool, they start weeding through all of those in the spring, you know, the wheat from the chaff kind of thing. So we'll do that. I do that each semester for our students. So if you want to hear me drone on for another hour, you can be a part of that. All right. I look forward to this. This might be the highlight of my week. How sad is that? I need to get a life. I enjoyed this, though. I appreciate all the time and effort y'all put into this. Y'all are doing it. I'm most pleased.
Thank you, Dr. Lamb.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good week. Thank you.
All right.